First of all, we ask you, Daniella Ponticella, please take a bow. Your performance over the Olympics was absolutely nothing short of sensational. I hope you enjoyed it, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. I did. It was a wild ride, and I can confidently say I don't have an Olympic fever, which I have to say, though, when you know that you've been assigned and you're going to do this, that's one of the things that kind of weighs on you is like, gotta stay healthy, gotta stay healthy, gotta stay healthy. I'm assuming that's what every athlete is thinking. But the same goes for broadcasters. You don't want to have to miss out on this opportunity because you're under the weather. So made it through, feeling good. And of course, I wish Tegan well as well. We were texting earlier, so I just hope she's feeling better.
Awesome to tell you that you were stuck with me. So that was good to give you the proper heads up because everybody knows that. So now that the experience is done, have you had a chance? I know we're only 24 hours out. Have you had a chance to take a deep exhale and look back at what you've achieved and what your teammates that provided Olympic coverage to our nation achieved?
I'm so glad you mentioned the team because it's quite an impressive undertaking when you get to see how it all works behind the scenes and how many people are on the ground, how many people are feeding information, and you're always working as a group. So I'm glad you shouted them out. I feel like I've been able to take a little bit of stock, but it is one of those things where you suddenly feel like, am I doing enough? Because that's what it's been like the last several months where, have I chipped away at some prep? Have I checked rosters? Do I know who's been qualified? Because that's one of the things about the Olympics is that a lot of stuff happens last minute when it comes to even knowing who's competing. So there's kind of like this period of time where you're preparing this general sort of sense of, okay, we know the countries who are coming in. I'm talking about for the hockey tournament. And then it's all about trying to sort out who will be there. And you kind of have a good sense of who might be there. But it's super fun. And it's pretty... Yeah, I've had lots of those times, Dave, because I was thinking back to 4 years ago when the last Winter Olympics happened, and I was working in Saskatchewan and starting to call hockey, and even working with you as a rinkside reporter on SJHL broadcasts and things like that, and just kind of wetting my feet in that space. So yeah, there's been a lot of reflecting back to how these last 4 years alone have shaped up.
Daniella Ponticella is joining us. Again, you heard her voice, which is now going to become synonymous with Olympic moments, which is pretty cool because that stuff lives forever. You could tell the amount of work that went into your preparation for your broadcast. Were you ever at any time, though, I know with a live sporting event, you would never think that, hey, I get a dress rehearsal, but did you have an opportunity to do rehearsal games beforehand with your colleagues that you got to work with?
Well, the good thing is I work with Becky Keller very frequently in the PWHL, and we were paired together for many games heading up to this. But I would say the sort of dress rehearsal that you're talking about kind of happened in the 3 Women's World Championships that we worked together previous, because they're structured very similarly to an Olympic tournament, and so many of the same countries are coming, with the exception of host nation Italy. France as well is not in that top division of the Women's World Championship. So there's some differences, but not many. The Group A is the Group A and the Group B is very similar. So there was this familiarity and this understanding of what it's like. And depending on where it's held, there have been times when we have been there in person. In the case of the Olympics, a lot of Canadian broadcasters work out of the broadcast center in Toronto. And so it's just an interesting dynamic of needing to live and breathe on Italian time, but you're here. And while you're kind of living your regular life, you're not living your regular life. So, there's so many fascinating parts to that, but we've been through this. And I can tell you, like, we've called tournaments that have been out in Finland, and the time difference is even more extreme. So, you kind of like look at things and you go, okay, at least it was 6 a.m. for most games to start versus a 4 a.m. start, which means you're there at 2 a.m., things like that. So no complaints on that. And I would say that those events absolutely prepared us for what we were stepping into.
So you brought up the broadcast center in Toronto, which you were working out of, and a number of athletes talk about, the athlete village is such a cool experience to meet people from different walks of life and different sports. Now, Joanne Courtney and her social media would take us behind her coffee break run for the fifth end break. I'm glad she didn't
Which
run over
I
anybody.
witnessed in person a few times. I would just see her sprinting out of I'm like, Joanne, and she just bolting.
I'm thinking somebody's got to get the girl a Keurig, but did you have an opportunity to meet other broadcasters along the way that was maybe a same experience to the athletes?
Yeah, I guess, and thank you for bringing that up. That is kind of, you look at what opportunities are there in this sort of different kind of environment, and that would be an absolute plus and a pro. I'll never forget walking in, I think it was morning day 2, and there's one other person in this massive dining hall, and we're both sort of reaching for the sugar at the same time for our coffee, and it's just Ron McLean, it was such an interesting experience to kind of be around that, and there's still a part of me that fangirls a little bit. Like Jennifer Jones, I was working in Winnipeg when she was on her epic runs that she had at Sochi, and so I interviewed her kind of during the prep time for that, and so to see her now in the broadcast, that was so cool. So there's always that little part of me that's also just excited to meet and talk with people, and then having some discussions with, okay, how was your sport today? Like for some of the other play-by-play folks and what they went through, and just seeing that joy, and then meeting people I never thought I would meet. Like I have to give all the credit to the two Inuktitut announcers. They must have called the most combined hockey of anybody, because they were there for day 1 of the women's tournament, which started 2 days before the Olympics, and they went all the way through to that Sunday gold medal game for the Canadian men. And it was impressive what they were doing to bring that broadcast to people in Canada's north, people who speak Inuktitut. I just thought it was beautiful. So it was really interesting to meet so many broadcasters doing so many important things across our country.
I am going to ask you about the highlight or the call that you made that you love the most. Before we get to that, it may be the same one as I had, because watching on social media, some people call it trolling, some people call it stalking. You use what you want, but I loved the video that you posted on a power play late in a hockey game that had not only the pictures of the hockey game occurring, but your call and your excitement, because you could hear it in your voice and then you got to see it firsthand, which I thought was really cool.
That game was Czechia and Sweden in what to me is the closest quarterfinal to be expected, right? It's when you have the, one of the closest. You also expect the 2 Group A teams who are meeting in the quarters to be close. But we figured that the skill from the Swedes that we saw throughout their Group B dominance was going to match up nicely with that third in Group A team. So we were expecting a tight game. It was very tight. And the Czechs were the team that everyone thought might even spoil the party for Canada to get to the final. So they had pretty high expectations. And so to have them then be on the precipice of not even being able to push for a medal, this is what we're at. And so I think that game in particular was a real highlight for me. And I think it might also have been the game in which I had the most sleep, Dave. So that always helps. All the other games I was very sleep deprived, but we had the day off before. There was no women's hockey the day before. So, you kind of take the wind with that as you will. I did get to call a number of the U.S. games. Those are kind of fun in their own way, just because I'm so familiar with the U.S. players, being that they're in the PWHL. So there's lots of storytelling. But in terms of close games, I think that one would be the highlight. For sure. And then to be able to say, Sweden's going to the semifinal for the first time in 12 years is always, there's always those moments. I also did some ski cross, and that was really neat. Unfortunately, Canada did not fare well in ski cross. They were out in the quarters, but lots of history was made. Italy won its first medal in that sport. So those moments always feel kind of just extra good, extra exciting.
You and Tegan must have got on the same wavelength here, because ski cross is what I was about to ask you about, because I was once told as a broadcaster that, for example, I've never played the game of basketball. I couldn't make a 3-point shot to save my life. Like, you would want to sprinkle against me every chance you get on that. But I think the ultimate compliment is that it sounds like you had participated in ski cross your entire life. And the broadcasting advice I got was make it sound like you've done it. Do enough homework to make it sound like you've done it. So how did you do it?
That's a really great question, because sometimes I'm like, I don't know. No, as soon as you find out that you're going to be doing this, I treat it as though I know absolutely nothing. So even if I've seen, and I'd seen a couple broadcasts here and there, because CBC Sports does show, especially alpine skiing. They show a lot of skiing on weekends, for example. So I had a little bit of familiarity with it. But first things first, I just go into it as though I know nothing. I start with a simple Google of like, tell me the absolute basics of the sport. And once you kind of get that and you get that sense, then it's just adding in layers. Okay, then I'll go and watch a broadcast and I take a ton of notes, whether it's, okay, I don't understand this. That makes sense. Wait, is this the reason why this makes sense? Like all of those things, how long does an athlete need to be doing the sport before they can reach that World Cup stage where they're on the circuit, all of those sort of things. And then it just goes back to more research, but also talking to people who've done it. And of course, knowing that I was getting to work with Canadian gold medalist, silver medalist as well, 3-time Olympian Kelsey Serwa, that was a phenomenal resource. So just being able to talk to her about what does it feel like? And that's the thing too. She is going to bring so much of that to our broadcast. So it's just a matter of supporting her and making sure that all of that gets shared. And then just enjoying the thrill ride that is a 4-skier race in insane conditions half the time. And you're hurling down a mountain. It's just incredible. Like it's pretty impressive to see. So I think that's the approach that I would take for that. And then when you have to learn games, like a higher level game that you might not have played at that level, then it just takes a bit more time. And I'm a full on, like I will read a rule book top to bottom if I have to, right? Like yeah. It's so much, it's kind of funny. Sometimes I'm like, there's a lot of just studying as though, I was back in university or something, but yeah.
Okay. I don't want to be rude or presumptuous, and I apologize if I was. Have you ever taken part in a ski cross event?
No,
okay,
no. I have skied. I wasn't like, no shade to skiers. I wasn't cool enough to snowboard. I just couldn't figure out snowboarding. So I always stuck to skis. So at least I was familiar with the general mechanics of it. But yeah, I was there to call that. And from my understanding, a lot of the voices who've called ski cross have not competed in that sport. It is very specialized. You have to be really, really good, not only at skiing, but at all of the different forms of it, from the slalom to the jumps and all of that. So it's really impressive stuff.
So my mad respect for you right there, because I was told once that if you can skate, you can ski. And I am a testament that when I walked down with my skis over my shoulder on the Mission Ridge Bunny Hill and the instructor said, "You can skate, right?" There you go. Just saying.
Oh, goodness.
So did you get a chance to experience and take in any of the other events, or were you just in your own little cocoon focused on what you needed to do?
I did get a chance to. The way it's set up there's plenty of screens all around, and even in the areas where we can take breaks, where we should take breaks and actually like not be maybe absorbing everything. But it's hard when you want to watch certain events. So there was lots of speed skating on around the same time. So whenever we had a break in between, I'd be watching some speed skating. I was in the building when some of those calls were happening. Canada was getting medals. That's really exciting. So yeah, I did try to keep an eye on it, but it is one of those things. I probably watch more Olympics when I'm not working in it, just by the nature of just having it on the TV while you're puttering around the house. But of course, I made time to watch the gold medal games, Sunday included, like the rest of the nation. So there were certainly events that I'm like, I can't miss this. I feel like I would have watched more figure skating if I could, because I do love the figure skating events, but they overlapped a lot of those mornings.
No doubt. Let's go to the Prairie Land Rentals text line. Folks are sending you messages. So Blake says, I thought that call was amazing. So obviously referencing the video that you put up on social media. I found out that sometimes Daniella is just like me as a broadcaster on a call sometimes. So that's pretty cool from Blake to hear that.
It's the hands. I think he's referring to you got to get into it. Yeah. I don't think I could call just standing like this. I don't think that that's possible. I don't know. How about you, Dave, when you're in the booth with the rider games? I mean, those moments are so epic. They're so big. How do you handle yourself?
I don't think anybody wants to see that, but I will tell you that the guy that stands to my right all the time has bruised my ribs and knocked my headset off my head before. Just throwing that out there.
I like that. So no names, no. Luke, but that's what it's about. You got to get into it.
Absolutely. Well, and Brad says, what about 2028? Could we see you at the Summer Olympics? And that's from the Prairie Land Rentals text line.
Well, I'd certainly love that. I was able to call Paris 2024. I did the 3x3 basketball tournament, especially because the Canadian women had high hopes of medaling in that. They made it all the way to the bronze medal game and fell just short. But yes, that would be my goal, is to be there. And it could be the same sport. It could be something else. But we have 2 years to figure that out, which is pretty exciting. But I would absolutely love to. And I think that's my goal. It would be to continue. And then because it's in North America, who knows what that means for travel for us and things like that. You know, it will be interesting to see how the setup is for games. It's a lot closer to home than some of the others.
A month at Disneyland. What could go wrong?
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, before I get you out, Daniella Ponticella, first of all, terrific job. Thank you for doing this. The question that is being asked of the NHL men that are returning from the Olympic Games is, how do you maintain that high and level of performance that you had with so much intensity at the Olympics into your regular season? Same question with the Professional Women's Hockey League. How are they going to go ahead and maintain that level as they go ahead and go through the stretch run of the season now?
The only thing that I can sort of look at as some sort of evidence to think that the aftermath will actually be better than what we saw heading in is the fact that the women, the way the schedule was the last 2 seasons, they would have to have a break for World Championship. Again, a World Championship, not quite the level of the Olympics, but still the same crossover of athletes. And so they would go spend the month of April, competing in the World Championship, which I believe is the same number of games, or it might be a couple more. But the point is that they would have that. And then when they came back, so many of those athletes continued or had a big bump in their point production post-World Championship. I look at the likes of the USA's Kelly Panic, a player who last year barely scored. I think she may have had 2 goals heading in the World Championship. She scores 4 goals there for the United States, comes back, goes on a tear, helps her team win the championship. So we have actually seen that the bump has happened and the boost has happened for those players in some capacities. My biggest concern, of course, is how Poulin's injury, how bad it is. Yeah. Obviously, the Montreal Victoire will be looking at that and making sure she's all right. But knock on wood, it seemed like so many of on the female side, especially, it seemed like the athletes in the PWHL were healthy throughout the tournament. So that's really great news for the league because we get started Thursday. We're back in action Thursday, and I've got a call on Saturday. So it's really quickly heading right back to it.
Well, Daniella Ponticella, fantastic job at the Olympics. Congratulations on an extremely, extremely exhilarating effort that we got to watch and be front row seats for here right across the nation. I promise next time you're on, Tegan will be here, but don't worry. I've already gone ahead and ordered chicken noodle soup for her with Skip the Dishes in your credit card. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dave.